we were saying about this possibility of considering gender as a social construct because of the benefits for the government to now invest in social insurance, trying to help people with this.
Right. But then the problem is, if the brain crystallizes around it, then it is biological, because the brain is biological, right? So even if it's something that, it's like cancer. You're not born with cancer, right? You're born with stem cells, but you're not born with cancer. But things that happen to you, from environmental to your own behavior, smoking, for example, will produce cancer. So do we say, oh, well, it was your choice to smoke? Okay, maybe people might say that. Some people are very harsh, might say that. So you get lung cancer, you deserve to get lung cancer because you smoked. It's kind of a nasty thing to say to people, right? In the same way, if the brain, if the idea of you as a gendered person, even as a transgendered person, or as a no-gendered person, or as a polygendered person, or whatever the hell you think you are, if that crystallizes in your brain as your real identity, right? And you're not a detransitioner. You're not somebody who's like, well, I think today I'm a girl, but tomorrow I'll be a boy again. No, this is it. You've been this way since you've been a kid. Well, do we not help people like that? The same way we wouldn't help people with cancer?
So considering the purpose of this podcast, Jim, like neuroscience for a better life, I would ask, how valid is for someone who is feeling sexually dysphoric, trying and probably making a mistake, probably realizing he or she was wrong regarding that, and then having the experience and living a life according to what he or she wants, and not trying to please anybody else, because well-being depends on the person itself. How valid would it be to allow committing these mistakes? Because out there is a big medical community arguing that for no reason, pediatricians or sexual experts should allow people to try all these possibilities in order to reach well-being. I mean, if someone with sexual dysphoria is listening to us, they might be wanting to hear what is the correct way to go.
So I assume you mean gender dysphoria in this particular case, not sexual dysphoria. Right. So here's the important point. There are 3 types of transgendered person. Once you've come to that conclusion and you've waited, you can become that person simply by dressing as that person and feeling like you're that person, right? And some people transition to that level and they never do any more. Others will transition to that level and take hormones. So if I'm a male to female, I'm going to maybe take drugs that might suppress my androgens, and I'll take estrogen. I'll take estradiol, yeah? And I'll grow breasts, but I'm not having any surgery, right? Others will transition, have hormones, and get surgery, right? The surgery is irreversible. The hormones are not irreversible. The surgery is.
Take many years to be reversible, right?
Well, I mean, it might take a while to reverse, but it is still reversible.
Right.
The surgery is not. So for surgery, you want people to be very certain that this is what they want. And that's where the political problem has become. Because who decides when a person is certain, right? We say, okay, what's the age of majority? Well, the age of majority is 18. So we might say, okay, at that age, you can decide to kill yourself. You can decide to jump off a bridge. You can decide.
Except drinking alcohol, right, Jim?
Yeah, right, of course, because then, oh, God forbid, right? Well, again, that's part of our repression of pleasure. Okay. Well, that and the fact that we don't like people that young to drive cars when they're drunk because they
Right.
make bad decisions.
But
But
apparently, drinking alcohol is worse than changing gender, right?
well, clearly, right? So we say, okay, you can get a tattoo. You can modify your body at that age. You can make a decision to pierce your nose or pierce your tongue, right? Or, do whatever it is that you want to do because it's your body at that point. So if that's true, then we say, okay, you got to wait till you're 18 to get the surgery. Now, in many cases, that's fine. People wait. They don't like to wait. We want everything, especially, nowadays we want everything immediately. We want immediate gratification, right? But sometimes when you have to wait, your gratification is all the better when it finally happens. And it also gives you time to really determine whether this is what you want to do, right? And people say, well, I shouldn't have to wait. Well, that's like when you go to a restaurant, you have to wait for the food to be cooked. And it tastes the better the more you wait. Until you wait too long, then it doesn't taste good at all. But, there's an optimality curve, an inverted U-shaped curve to how long you got to wait. And of course, this happened in our research too. When the females had to wait to get their stimulation, they showed a preference. If they didn't have to wait, they didn't show a preference. It was too easy,
Right.
right?
Me
So
too, right?
waiting is a good thing. And that's why we have courtship. That's why it's not just swiping right or left on Tinder or Grindr. Back in the day, you had to wait. And so you made decisions about waiting in that time while you were waiting. Is this really the right person for me? So
Kind of
we do the same thing here.
building up dopamine to the right.
Exactly, right? But it's also building up kind of a proper perspective, right? So people don't want to wait, but sometimes when they don't wait, they do something immediate and then they regret it. Right? And in the United States, this has led to lawsuits where people are saying, well, why didn't you make me wait? It's like, okay, wait, you didn't want to wait. So we gave you medical procedure that you felt you needed at the time, or you were going to kill yourself. And now you're suing me because I didn't make you wait. So what? I should have let you kill yourself? Well, this is where intervention at many different levels is required,
Right.
right? Because once these people get through it, either one way or the other, yeah, they're going to be fine.
Sure.
And they're going to live a beautiful, long life.
But also,
So,
there is this evidence, I think it's from Professor Zucker, that indicates that after puberty, many children with gender dysphoria stop feeling dysphoric and turn either heterosexual or gay, but no
yeah,
longer gender dysphoric.
right.
Probably because puberty, with all this brain organization, was a critical period of neurogenesis and more neurons connecting to each other, apparently help having this mental clarity of what you want and who you are. So would you
And
say
during puberty, it's a period of intense and very uncontrollable emotions, right? You hate your parents, you hate your people that used to be your friends, you hate them, you now have new friends, you're not accepted, you want to be part of a group. Like there's so much emotional turmoil that happens at puberty. And for some people it's horrible, and for other people it's not so horrible. So you're mixing it with that as well.
right?
And you can't make good decisions in the midst of emotional turmoil.
Yeah, so far I am one of those people who think that for gender dysphoric people, the correct thing would be to wait until after puberty and not before taking any permanent decisions. Some people think the opposite way for sure, that the earlier the better, and having puberty blockers might help much more. But having all this evidence about plasticity in the
Right.
brain puberty, I think that makes a lot of sense regarding that.
Well, one of Ken Zucker's points is to stop the anxiety. okay, about it, because that, again, it makes for bad decision making. The idea of stopping the anxiety starts early. So, for example, when the kid says, "Oh, I'm a girl, but you painted my room blue. I want my room painted pink because pink is a girl color and blue is a boy color." You can already see that they're beginning to kind of socially differentiate, right? But at a very core level in them, they're beginning to differentiate this social construct. Like, why does blue mean boy and pink mean girl?
Right.
I can wear pink and not be a girl. It's like ridiculous, right?
I
So
love pink t-shirts, by the way.
exactly, right? So it's kind of ridiculous, but at the same time, it's culturally determined. So they say, "Oh my God, there's a truck. I don't want a truck. Daddy, you got me a truck because you don't respect me. Blah 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 blah. I don't want the truck. Get the truck out of here. I'm going to scream." Okay. So Zucker would say, let's reduce the anxiety about boy toys. Let's make it okay to have boy toys or girl toys or toys that have no gender to them whatsoever. Okay. Here's your PlayStation. There's no gender to your PlayStation. All right. So we'll do that to reduce the anxiety around that. Now, when he does that, it's not many, but some of those kids, when they stop being freaked out, some of them decide not to transition. Or some of them, if they do transition, they transition to what our native peoples, our Aboriginal peoples used to call two-spirited, where I'm partly a girl and I'm partly a boy. And my pronoun will be they and them, but I'm going to be okay with my boy part and okay with my girl part.
Right.
And then that becomes who they are. And maybe when they're in their 20s or 30s, they might decide, you know what? I'm not that anymore. I'm really the she that I was born as, right? Or they may decide, you know what? I want to transition completely. But if you reduce all that anxiety, then you get clarity and clarity in thinking, right? So again, if the kid says, I mean, how many kids say, I'm a dog,
Right.
right? It doesn't mean they're going to transition.
Right.
Okay. But what we're doing now is we're going the opposite way and saying, well, the kid at 6 said, I'm a girl, therefore start him on puberty blockers.
Right.
Well, the kid's not even near puberty.
Right.
So starting him on puberty blockers in a brain that hasn't begun to go through puberty yet is ridiculous.
But also this approach helps teenagers understand that they are taking decisions, but not permanent decisions, which
Right.
might be very helpful for them to feel they're actually deciding by themselves, right?
Well, and many people who have to, again, I shouldn't say many because nobody knows the actual number or proportion, but some people have said that it was, in retrospect, that it was really good that they had to wait.
Right.
Okay. And that's not just people that would have been detransitioners. That's also people that transition.
Right.
Okay. But now they're making a decision that they feel really comfortable with, as opposed to one that it's like, oh my God, it's totally driven by my anxiety.
Right.
Right. All my girlfriends are becoming boys. I got to become a boy too, if I'm going to become part of it. Right. And so, and it's like, well, if you do that, how far are you going to take it? Are you going to have surgery?
Right.
Because
can we say, can you tell to those people, deal with your anxiety in many other ways that you can, but wait for permanent decisions as long as possible?
I don't think they can deal with their anxiety. They need intervention.
Right.
They need clinical intervention. They need people who understand this
and
are
not
judgmental,
right?
Right. But you take them through a series. Can you live as a female?
Right.
For example, male to female. If you can live and dress as a female, which maybe you've been doing since you were younger, now you want breasts. Okay. So we can put you on hormones.
Right.
You can get the breasts. And once you're 18, now surgery. If you still want it, you got it. And the government, the medical system covers it for you.
Right.
Right.
But of course, being informed as much as possible before taking any decision. Read your podcast, ask people, etc. Have as much as information, because your final decision will be better the most information you got. Right?
But importantly, the final decision should be that individual's decision
Right.
and not based on their friends, their parents,
Right.
their religious organization,
Right.
their government. It has to be something that they decide with their doctors,
Right.
right? With the best information available, right?
Right.
And without judgment, right? Without people saying, "Oh, you're just weird," or "You're just this," or "You're just that." It's like, because that makes people want to do stuff, right?
Right.
That they may eventually regret.
But I mean, telling people not to do something doesn't work. And we know this from years.
Exactly. Well, that's what I mean.
Like Christianity teaches you not to have sex before marriage. And look at the numbers, you know?
And
Uh,
everybody has sex before marriage. Okay. It teaches priests not to have sex, but if you go back in history, priests have been having sex with nuns, and they've been having sex with children, and they've been having sex with same-sex partners, and they've been blah, 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 blah. You can't stop the sex.
right.
It's
Well,
irrepressible.
we started with a Woody Allen anecdote, right? So
Exactly.
I have another question, Jim. I mean, I know you've been involved in all your career in preclinical models of sexual medicine, and you have lots of expertise in exploring with rats, mice, and other species how understanding the brain mechanisms might help find new medications and new forms to help people with sexual disorders, especially sexual desire. So in that regard, I would like to ask you, what are, as far as you know, the recent advances that have implications in the treatment of sexual disorders from your perspective that might help people who listen to this podcast?
Well, obviously, there are many drugs for men. There are lots of things for men. There are many surgical techniques for men. There's a whole bunch of stuff for men. There are maybe four things in the arsenal for women. Okay. And among them are two drugs that, of course, came through our lab, both flibanserin, which is now known as Addy, and bremelanotide, which is now known as Vyleesi. A lot of people think those drugs don't work and that they have horrible side effects. Flibanserin was supposedly having a side effect of that you would just like collapse. Okay. And this collapsing side effect, especially when you drink alcohol, okay, it's called syncope. And this would make you, if you're walking up the steps, you just like boom, faint, fall down the steps, maybe kill yourself. Well, it turned out that wasn't true. There was no more syncope with flibanserin than there was with the control. Okay. And the original study that was done had people taking the drug and drinking I don't know, like the alcohol equivalent of a six-pack of beer on an empty stomach in the morning.
Right.
Okay, which is the Food and Drug Administration in the US made them do the worst case scenario of like the worst possible alcoholic who gets up and drinks a six-pack of beer in the morning. Okay.
Right.
Well, okay. But it turns out when studies were done subsequent to that, there was no greater syncope. And what was interesting is that people were told, take the drug before you go to sleep. Not sleep as in, I'm sleeping with this person to have sex. Sleep as in going to sleep. So if syncope does happen because you had too many drinks, you're not going to fall out of bed. You're going to go to sleep and maybe even have a better sleep. Okay. There was some nausea, went away pretty quickly. So you tolerate it out to that effect. Same with bremelanotide. Okay. That's bremelanotide didn't have the syncope associated with it, but it had nausea and flushing associated with it. Okay. Do they work? Well, yes, they increase desire. But here's a problem. Women can have desire and not have sex. And women can have sex without having desire for it. So the drug does what it's supposed to do, but that doesn't translate into a measure that the Food and Drug Administration in the US imposed on it, which was called sexually satisfying events, SSEs. And it's a bean counting thing. So how many SSEs did you have on the placebo relative to the drug? Well, it was significant. but it amounted to like between 1 and 2 per month more. But those 1 and 2 per month more were significant because it was the woman initiating sex, not the male pleading for it. Okay, tonight, honey, please. Maybe, okay, how about tomorrow? Tomorrow, please. Okay, what about the next day? Please, 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 please. Yeah, no, it wasn't that at all. It was her saying, I want you now.
But that's a lot, man. I mean,
That's a hell of a lot.
yeah,
That's a hell of a lot. And
too much, too
so
much
from
sounds like too little, but when
yeah,
it's spontaneous, it's a lot.
exactly. Well, and it's not it's not the number of times you have sex. It's the quality of the sex. Right? Everybody said, oh, I had sex like 5 times last week. Okay, great. Did you enjoy it? Or was it a duty? Especially if it's a woman who's been brought up saying that this is her duty. Yes, I had sex 5 times. Oh, well, you're on the upper end of people's. Okay, ask the question, how many times did you enjoy it last week? And she might say 0. Yeah. So that's not a way to get at it. The bean counting is not the way to do it, right?
Right.
And SSEs are not a good measure, right? So there are other drugs in the pipeline. There's one that uses testosterone, very small, vanishingly small dose of testosterone. And it's surrounded by sildenafil, which is the drug called Viagra. And so
Right.
you put it under your tongue
You mean for women?
for women.
Yeah.
But all of these will work in men too.
Yeah.
Okay. And I want to get to that in just a second. So the idea is you put it under your tongue, let the testosterone go through. There's a mucosal lining under your tongue so that it gets it right into the bloodstream and right into the ascending aorta. So it goes right into your brain. There's no peripheral effect whatsoever. Okay. So
No
it gets in your
liver,
brain.
no liver breaking down.
No liver break. Yeah, no, none of that. Right. It doesn't raise your steroid hormone binding globulins. It doesn't do anything that would indicate that it got into the periphery. But what it does about 4 hours later is it gets you horny. Now, the sildenafil activates blood flow to the clitoris. So you get an erection. Yeah. And in the presence of testosterone in your brain, that erection is detected. Okay. What you've done is essentially you have tricked the brain into thinking that you're ovulating because you get this bolus of testosterone and now you've got blood rushing into your clitoris and you're like, oh, wow, and you're not only feeling it, but you also get vaginal lubrication. So now you know that you are, in fact, horny and ready to go. That drug works, and that raises even the SSEs to around 4 or 5, not between 1 and 1.5. Okay.
Just by adding testosterone.
Okay.
Just by adding testosterone
To sildenafil together.
to that.
And it activates more in women who have low excitation.
Right.
Okay. They do the same thing with testosterone and a drug called buspirone. Okay. Which is a serotonin. It's a 5-HT1A agonist. So what it does is it acts like serotonin at presynaptic autoreceptors, which is a signal to tell the neuron to stop secreting serotonin.
Right.
So buspirone reduces serotonin levels. Well, guess what? In people that have high inhibition, not low excitation, but high inhibition, this combination works to reduce the inhibition enough
So, Jimmy,
that now they can attend.
how can we tell the difference between high inhibition and low excitation? How can we tell?
Well, you've got questionnaires that can do this. Eric Janssen and John Bancroft have a questionnaire that I think more people should be using clinically to determine who has low excitation or high inhibition. We also have, I helped the group in the Netherlands who have this drug develop a companion diagnostic. It's a very small blood test that looks for things like serotonin reuptake proteins, serotonin receptor, oxytocin receptor, dopamine, different dopamine receptors in blood. And it predicts who's got low excitation, who's got high inhibition. And it's not even an expensive blood test because you're looking at what are called single nucleotide polymorphisms of the genes for those receptors. And you're saying, okay, when the SNPs are high for inhibition, then we have a problem of people that may have greater inhibition. Turns out they do. When the SNPs are low for the excitatory systems, we say, maybe this is somebody who has low excitation. Turns out they do. And it turns out that the drugs are better when you've identified who's got high or low inhibition and excitation. Yeah. And what hasn't been done yet is to see whether the companion diagnostic of the single nucleotide polymorphisms correlates with the questionnaire. Because if it does, you only ever need the questionnaire, right?
Right.
You wouldn't need to do the blood test. Or you could do both just to make absolutely sure, right? And that's the problem with both Addy and Vyleesi. They were never done. The clinical trials were never done where you identified who had low excitation or high inhibition. So they were mixing these populations, which of course means that some are non-responders and some are really good responders. But when you dilute the population, the SSEs go down.
Right.
Right. So again, this is something that I think is really, really important because we find the same thing in rats. I can make them low excitation by giving them low hormone. I can make them high inhibition by training them that they have bad sex with a male that has a particular odor. Then when I give bremelanotide to this group, it works. And it works greater than it would work in this group. When I give Addy to this group, it works. And much better than it does in this group. Because you're mixing and matching these two things. But notice that's experience.
Right.
That's experience. So when you get to the idea here, which was your core question about nature, nurture, and the role of experience in low libido, is it because people have systems that aren't working naturally? Well, maybe they've been lifelong, right? And they just haven't had desire for sex their entire lives, right? Okay. What if it's situational, right?
Right.
And what if it's not general? It's situational and generalized, right? So it's like they just don't feel desire anymore, but they used to, and they want to get back to that. Well, that means they've had experience with probably bad sex, non-rewarding sex, which makes them think, why bother? Right? But if they're in a relationship, they want to want it again.
You have this nice diagram in one of your publications about internal versus external stimuli that account for sex. So one of the internals I remember is nutrition, for sure. The way your hormones and your neurotransmitters are working on in your brain and your periphery, but externals also are as environment, stress,
Sure,
things that are happening to you in your life, work,
yeah,
being employed, just breaking up with someone, etc. So all both internal and external combine together to make your present either very exciting or very inhibitory.
yep.
So, Jim, this talk is fantastic. Obviously, I would love to have a second, third, fourth podcast with you. But before we finish this, I would like you to tell our audience, what would you tell the regular people who might be listening to you, probably a grandma, probably a husband that is being 50, 55, or probably 20, what would you tell them the important things about sex regarding all this conversation that we just got?
Well, it is a use it or lose it function, like everything else in your brain. So let's start out with the brain. That is your number one sex organ. Your genitals are important, but they're not nearly as important as your brain, right? So you want to make sure that you're having the best that you can have, that you enjoy, which means you got to know yourself and you got to know your partner. You got to explore with your partner. Okay. And that's true whether you're 60 or whether you're 20. Okay. Explore. Sex is play. And we know this from animals. When animals are playing, even prepubescent animals are playing, all the components of sexual behavior are there. They get put together at puberty, but they're there. So sex comes out of play. It comes out of fun, right? We have sex for fun. We don't have sex just for reproduction. Okay. In fact, I don't think people even know. I think back, 50,000 years ago. Maybe people knew that having sex would make babies, but maybe the first time they did it, it was just like, oh my God, it's fun. Yeah. So, and animals certainly don't know that they're making babies. They haven't read the book, right? And their parents didn't teach them that. So they just do it because it's fun, because it's pleasurable. Have sex that is the most pleasure you can have. And always do something different. If you're going out for date night, yeah, go to a hotel afterwards. Don't go back home. Because if home is boring, all the cues that are in your house are essentially priming you to have boring sex. So have it in the hotel. And if you mess up the sheets, so what? Let the hotel staff deal with it. Okay? Have sex that's fun. Play with it. Talk about it. Talk about what you like. Yeah? And know your body enough to know what you like and what you're capable of. Yeah? Don't do things that are painful. And if they are painful, get help. Not from your partner. Your partner has to be part of the help, but get professional help from a psychologist who knows how to deal with pain. Painful, things like dyspareunia, clitoridynia. That can be a problem. Men get that too. Okay. For men, I would say, stop thinking you always have to be ready. Because then when you get stressed out and you're not ready, you're going to feel terrible. But it's normal. Sex needs to be fun. It's not a numbers game. Don't think you got to do it all the time. You don't. And that doesn't make you a man if you do. It makes you, I don't know, kind of like somebody who doesn't appreciate the food you're eating. You just kind of wolf it down so you can get on to the next thing. Maybe watch a football game on television. Okay. But we don't do that really when we eat. We want to savor our food. We want to eat it and taste it. So when you have sex that you treat like a really fine dinner at a restaurant where you're not going to just eat it like a vacuum cleaner, but you're going to savor it, taste it, feel it in your mouth, right? Have sex like that. And people that do that and that are intimate with each other have the best relationships.
Right.
Right. So I don't think I like it's not rocket science, but it's something that we don't think about because we're not taught to think about sex that way. We're not taught to talk about it. So you know what? Talk about it. We're not taught to play with ourselves. So you know what? Play with yourself. Do all the things that nobody ever taught you to do or not to do. And if they taught you to not do it a lot. Because that's going to be something that I'm not saying, oh, well, I should, okay, maybe I'll try to have sex with a guy. If you're not feeling it, don't feel it. Don't try it. But if you do feel it, there's nothing that stops you from trying it. Yeah. Or bringing it into your partnered relationship, right? Porn's a good example, right? I caught him watching porn. That's cheating on me. Okay, well, maybe he's doing it because that's what arouses him. And maybe the sex you're having, not because it's your fault, it's both your faults, isn't arousing to either one of you. Maybe you both should be watching porn together, not separately, and making it something that you do with your partner as opposed to something you've got a wall between what you do that arouses you and what you do with your partner. Because that's death of a relationship right there.
Excellent.
right?
So,
And the last thing is know your body enough to know that when you are not feeling it anymore, which can happen when you're 20 or it can happen when you're 80, that is a good indication that there are other problems.
right.
If, for example, you're having erectile problems in your 50s or 60s, go get your heart checked out.
Right.
Okay? Because if you're not having erections at night, it means that you have a cardiovascular disease. Right? So all of these things are things that you need to know to maintain good health. And sexual health is physical health. Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. So I would just like to add, know yourself, know your nature, know your brain, and keep in mind that sex depends on both nature and nurture. That's the way to go and the way to enjoy your life and your present.
Exactamente.
Thank you very much, Jim, for this amazing talk. I love talking to you as always. You're a real thinker, my real mentor, always. And
Oh,
I'll
thank you,
always
Hanero.
learn from you very much. I appreciate that you wanted to be my very first guest. We'll be in touch next September for sure when you're coming here.
Well, I'm really proud of you, Hanero. I'm proud of everything you've accomplished, and I think this is the initiative to do this is really, really important for the people that are listening to it.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Okay, man.
See you next time.
I'll see you soon.
Have a good afternoon over there in Czech Republic.
Okay, man. Well, it's almost 6 p.m., so we're good. Okay, man.
Thank you again.
Adios.
Bye.
Bye.